Hey, this is Monique. Thanks for joining me again on One Mo Project. This time, I shortened a tie. One of my kids had a tie that he likes to wear, and he has to wear a tie pretty often. And he had trouble getting it where the back didn't hang out. He wanted it just maybe 2 inches shorter. So I'm going to show you what I did.
So I'm going to use a machine to do this, but if you don't have a sewing machine, this is something you could do without it. There's only one little seam where I use the sewing machine, and you could do that by hand if you had to. But the first thing you have to do to make this tie shorter is destroy it. Take it apart. There's a place where there's a seam that goes around, and it kind of goes diagonally around. That's so that you don't have all the bulk in one spot. See right there? Those arrows point. That's the seam that kind of goes diagonally across. And we have to get to that and take that apart. Let's find some blue thread though while we're here. What color blue? All the different color blues. This is how I organize my threads and my buttons and lots of things by warm colors and cool colors and neutral colors. Maybe all of your craft supplies fit in one shoebox, but mine take up just a little more space, like a whole room full of space. And it's pretty crowded. Anyway, back to the tie. So you have to take out the seam down the center of the back, but then you also have to take this seam out. You can't just cheat and kind of fold it and try to make it work without taking this seam out, because you have to move them over. That you can't just fold them and sew again, because the way they're cut, they're gonna need to be moved. See, now look, right sides together like they were, but then I have to move this one over so that the place that they meet at the edge is down 1 inch, so that I can take out the 2 inches out of this tie. So I'm going to check on that. Is that one good? Yay! But then I'm going to pin that one. And the pin is going to go through right there at the one where it's a little above it and it's a little bit below it, so that I sew right across that place where the fabric shows through the pin, and that's the 1 inch mark. So I can pin both sides, but then I can also pin in the middle. So on the ends, I'm shooting for that V where the fabric touches on the edges, but in the middle, I have that one little space on the needle where there's fabric, and that is my 1 inch mark. So see, this is the only place where I use the machine to sew. So you could get away with not having to have a machine for that one. So then I'm just going to give it a quick little check. All right, cut off that extra seam allowance there so that there's not that extra bulk added underneath the tie, and then iron that all flat. So if it ever wanted to be made long again, too bad, it's gone. And then cut out this extra interfacing. It's almost like batting in there to make it the right consistency for ties, but I had to cut off the edge of that a little bit because it needed to taper just a touch more to work. And then I'm going to fold that edge over to the back to the same way that it was when it was new. Yeah, good? All right. And then I will pin all of that in place so that I can sew it without it walking around. There's the thread that I took out to begin with laying there. And when I add my new piece of thread that I'm going to sew with, I tie it to that old piece. That keeps that from being able to come undone and work its way back down the tie that attaches them together. So I tied it to that piece that was sticking out from where I'd taken it out before. And then when I sew it, you have to be careful because you're only sewing that outer layer there. You don't want to go through and catch the front of the tie. So just carefully catching a little bit. And when you take your tie apart to do this kind of thing, you can see how it was done and try to sort of match those seams. And these were pretty long, loose seams. It wasn't some kind of tight little seam that was hard to get out or hard to put back in. So sew those back up all the way down that short length. I don't know, it's a couple inches worth, but then tie that off, and this tie will be ready to go. Now, if you have the opposite problem, your tie is too short because your bowl full of jelly maybe is a little too full of jelly, there aren't a lot of things you can do because there's not extra fabric in there to let it out. But what you can do is move the loop on the back so that it's up higher, so that it'll keep the back part in line with the front, and that'll help it a lot, even if it's still kind of short on the underside. Ah, there he is with his lovely half Windsor and a tie that comes nicely to his waist, and the back is just a couple inches shorter than the front.
Okay, now you'll know what to do if you ever have a tie that's just a little bit too long and it needs to be shorter. Remember, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. See you next time.